Now for the second part of 1 through 3, we are supposed to find the midpoints of the non-horizontal sides, label them R and S, and then draw RS. So for example, in this equilateral triangle, we've got to look at the non-horizontal sides, the left side and the right side, label each of the midpoints, and then connect the midpoints with a line segment and call it a line segment RS. So let's do that. Let's see what is the length of this side. This is 1.5 inches, okay, which is 3/2 of an inch, right? 1.5 inches is 3/2 of an inch. Let's write that down just so we can think aloud to ourselves. And what's 1/2 of that length? Well, we multiply 3/2 by 1/2. We get 3/4. So that, and of course that's not the length of AB. This is just on the side I'm doing this. But that's going to help us figure out where R is. So R has got to be 3/4 of an inch up. Let's zoom in so we can really see this in great detail. Got to measure 3/4 of an inch up here, which is right. Okay, it's camera's kind of blocking it, but it's right about over there. Okay, it's pretty close to 3/4 of an inch, right? Not bad. Okay, and then we've got to do 3/4 of an inch up on this side as well. This should be easier. I'm getting used to using the measuring side. Let me try to get that exactly 3/4 of an inch over here. That's about over there. Okay, and now we've been a little bit off on that. But now let's go ahead and let's draw RS. We'll label this R. We'll label this S. We'll draw RS. And then we are supposed to, and I know it's a little bit off there, but that's RS. And now we're supposed to do the measurement of RS. So let's go ahead and measure RS. Let's see how long RS is. And we get RS is just about exactly 3/4 of an inch, right? Okay, so RS is 3/4 of an inch long. That's interesting. RS is half of AB, isn't it? We already found out that half of 3/2 is 3/4. Okay, well, let's just kind of keep that in mind, and let's move on to the next one here. So we've got a scaling triangle, and now we've got to find the midpoint of the left side, and the left side measures 1.5 inches. We already did this. This is what we did last triangle. We know that 3/4 is the midpoint. Let's go ahead and make a mark at about the 3/4. Okay, so that's the midpoint of that side. And now let's take a look at the other side and let's figure out where its midpoint is going to be. So this side, we said, it's sort of like, should I round up to 3? It's really 2, and is that in, that would be 1/4 and 1/8. It's really 2 and 15/16. You know what? I'm going to round up to 3, but I'm going to go just a little bit to the left of that. It's supposed to be 3, which means it's supposed to be over here, but we know it's just a little shorter than 3, so I'm going to put it just a little bit to the left of that. Okay? Not being entirely precise here, I should really find a half of 2 15/16, but that just is a little bit more complicated than I want to do right now. So let's go ahead and let's draw the mid-segment of this triangle, and let's see what we find out about that. Okay, so we're going to call this R, we're going to call this S. We knew AB was 1 inch. I'm sorry, AB was 2 inches. Let's go ahead and measure RS. And we find that RS is pretty much bullseye 1 inch. Okay, RS is 1 inch long. So AB was 2 inches long, RS is 1 inch long. And again, we're seeing that RS is exactly half the length of AB. Well, let's go ahead and see if this is true in an isosceles triangle as well. So we already measured AB was 4 inches. Now let's measure the length of this side of the isosceles triangle. And that comes out to be pretty much 2.5 inches. Okay, and what would be the midpoint of 2.5 inches? Well, let's let's do some figuring here at the bottom. Okay, 2.5 inches is the same thing as 5 halves. Okay, 5 halves, right? 2.5 is 5 halves. That's the improper fraction. And we want to find a half of that. So we multiply it by 1/2. And that gives us 5/4, which is the same thing as 1 1/4. That would be 1 1/4 inches. So 1 1/4 inches away from either side would give us the midpoint. So let's go ahead and find where 1 1/4 inches is. 1 1/4 inches would be right over there. Right at that spot there. And we know the other side is the same length, so we would look again for 1 1/4 inches. Of course, it doesn't matter which side we're measuring from, right? Because this is in the middle. So it really doesn't matter which side we measure from, because it's going to be 1 1/4 inch from each of the sides. Now let's go ahead and make a dot here at 1 1/4 inches right there. Pretty good. Okay? And let's join these two points to make our line segment RS. There we go. Let's label R and S. And AB was 4 inches. Let's see what RS is in terms of its measure and its length. And we find out, bullseye, it's 2 inches, right? It's just right on the nose, 2 inches long. So AB is 4 inches, RS is 2 inches. So in all cases, we found that the mid-segment of the triangle is exactly half the length of the third side. So the two sides of the triangle we used here to find the midpoints and to connect RS in all cases, and the third side that we didn't use to connect the midpoints, in all cases is double the size of the mid-segment length. So we can form our conclusion by saying that the length or the measure, pretty much the same thing, the length or measure of the mid-segment of a triangle is half that the measure or the length of the third side of the triangle. And that's, to clarify, that's the side that is not the side that contains the midpoints, right? Okay, so the third side of the triangle is the side that was not used to create the mid-segment.